Wow. Yeah, what a day. So I was trying to use this as an opportunity to kind of prove to myself that I would keep at this even when you have crappy days. And so it's I don't know if crappy is the right word, but it's just been a mentally exhausting day. Um, for those of you who are programmers, developers, or just nerds that like to code, some days you'll find that when you've been programming literally all day, your brain kind of goes to mush and it's difficult to think about anything, much less how to appear congenial on the screen. So today I'm doing definitely a very informal stream. I wanted to give you guys some quick updates to the last time we streamed 2 days ago for Minecraft, and give you a little bit of a look into what all has changed. And you know, if we're feeling good about that, then cool. We'll just call it a day at that point. Probably be a relatively quick stream, all things considered. But if it's you know, if we feel like something we want to keep going, then we can go by all means and keep doing that. So let's see here. I'm gonna make sure that I've got at least my basic stuff going here. All right, cool. So let's go back to Minecraft. And yes, for some of you that follow my schedule pretty closely, you'll say, well, Blackburn, you said today was the Minecraft day, or you said today was the Overwatch day. Yes, I know. But I know that if I'm not firing on all cylinders mentally, that it's going to be one of those really hard to watch streams. So at least with this, it's most front of mind, so I'll be able to at least speak to some of the things that have gone on, because we have had a few things worth noting, even in just a short period of time. I pretty much got off the stream last time and knocked out to bed, but yesterday I was going pretty crazy with it. So we'll see. I want to show you guys several things here. Okay, so what all? Like I said, this is really. Some of you are probably watching this like, why is this guy's awful right now? Like, I understand this is not my normal kind of format, but I usually try to plan for these things and have a little bit more things together. But so as far as the applied energistics 2 stuff that we were going over, in fact, I'll do a recap deal there for you. So our setup, you may recall, if you don't, then just go over to the previous episode. We had basically all chests through here, and this was all very basic, just some non-technical type components and not a whole lot going on. Now it's surprisingly clean and sparse, with the exception of this pillar here in the middle. We'll get to that here in a second. And then, of course, we got this guy, which is also another pillar. Okay, well, what's going on? So we've gone much deeper into the applied energistics stuff, and I rewired a good portion of the guts underneath where you guys couldn't see before, and made it so that it was a lot more polished. So we also kicked off actually doing fully automated crafting. This is something that I feel like it deserves a little bit more treatment than I'll be able to give it today. I don't know, maybe if you know, viewer feedback is solid on this one, I'll be able to answer the questions people have. But right now, it's like there's a lot going on here. I will do my best, but we'll probably have a follow-up episode next week at the earliest, or maybe at the latest, I would say. So with that said, so this is, let me make sure, I'm doing my best to try and make it so that when you guys are flipping through my videos, you can at least visually see when I'm talking about a particular topic, and then maybe be able to reference that if you need to figure out like oh, how did he do this? Or what was the thing? What was the topic he was going over at this point? So at this stage, we're going to talk about, so applied energistics, applied energistics. Let's see, what was this? We were, oh yeah, autocrafting. Yeah, so, okay, so hopefully that shows up. Does it show up? Is it showing up? Oh, it's cutting it off again. See that thing on the bottom right of the screen there? I'm trying to at least try to make that a little bit more visible for you guys. Give me a break. The problem is that I don't really the way I've got this set up, it's a little bit challenging for me to make it look right without any sort of prep ahead of time. Okay, so applied energistics, autocrafting. This is, we're going to say, a primer. We're going to call this like a, to get you started setup. What you're looking at right now is really intimidating and arguably kind of a mental overload. So our previous episode, we actually went over how to use the inscribers and fully automate everything as far as the inscribers go. The process of using them once you've done it a few times isn't actually too bad. It's really just based on the direction. But all that aside, if you are interested and want a more detailed guide on this, just head over to the previous video. If the service that you're on, because I realize there are a number of services that don't have like past broadcasts that they put up, or for some reason you can't find it, no problem. If you head over to either the Twitch or YouTube site, you'll be able to get all of that information, like where we stream and all of that. And then of course the question then is, well, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Well, so the way this works is that I've got, we're simulcasting to a number of locations at once. And so that gives you a couple different options that you may not normally be familiar with. First of all, you'll be able to material on any service that you want. But for purposes of what I was just talking about, if I head over to my desktop real quick, if you go to bhax.net, that's bhax.net, you'll be able to see our stream website. This is set up to give you guys the ability to interact without having to sign in or use whatever service that you happen to be finding me on today. But yeah, so it gives you a little bit of an anchor to get back to the stream and be able to reach out. So yeah, if you have questions, obviously we've got the ability for you to send long form viewer feedback. Obviously chat is available if the service you're on right now has the chat available. Yeah, you can send a long form viewer feedback there and we'll go over it either on the next episode if needed or on our viewer feedback episode that we go over once a month. And those can be things related to hacking, penetration testing, information security, IT, and games, how I do a particular thing for, you know, Minecraft or Overwatch, whatever. It's kind of a whatever you want kind of thing. And that gives you the option of asking questions without having to use the chat, because I realize that it can be a little bit intimidating to people. Or you just don't have the option and maybe you want to come back and answer later. No problem. You've got our events calendar, and I do, as I'm proving today, I stick to it. I do my absolute best to, at a minimum, be streaming on the times that I say here. These are our events, so you'll be able to add this if you like to your own calendar and be able to follow along without actually having to subscribe if you don't, aren't able to. And of course, on the front page, if you just scroll down, you'll be able to see all the different places that we're streaming to right now. And if you're on a service that you don't have an account with, maybe, or if you find yourself, being able, like, you like the app for Facebook better, or you like the Twitch app better, or whatever, you can use that and just go to our site and then hop over using the links here, and that'll give you the option to just quickly bounce between our streams. But yeah, I also had a quick thing I wanted to update you guys on, and this is definitely a recap type situation. So we changed up the donation structure a little bit. I want to make it so that people don't feel like I am trying to ask for money, because honestly, I promise I don't need your money. I'm not, trying to, this isn't my career, and I'm not trying to make it one. This is me just trying to, communicate to the community and have a little fun while I'm doing it. So the donation system is, we've got the one time, which is, kind of what you would expect. We've also got the subscribe. And the reason I bring this up is that I basically changed it so that it's the cheapest thing. It was like $1 a month. And the only reason I even have a fixed amount for the subscriptions is just to, at a minimum, have something that I can do to say, okay, this person at least has the potential to not grief our server. And by donating even just $1, it kind of just sends the message to me that, hey, I care at least a little bit about this server, and I'm not going to grief it. It's not to say that we don't have protections in place. Of course, I mean, what's my profession? I mean, of course I'm going to go overboard on protections, but at least I don't want to have to deal with a lot of that stuff while I'm on the stream. So if you want to get access to our dedicated Feed the Beast server that I'm going to be playing on today, just head over to bhax.net/donate, and you'll be able to do a donation amount of, yes, as little as just a $1 US. And that really is nothing more to just to say, hey, this is me. I'm not, it's a lot easier for someone to grief and troll somebody if they don't have any sort of financial investment in it. And the way I look at it is, if somebody wanted to troll everything here, the joke would be on them ultimately, because I could just restore the server. We take regular backups every 30 minutes or less, and all those backups are uploaded and saved off-site. So we've got the ability to actually store years worth of server backups comfortably without running out of any space. So I wanted to make it something where people don't feel like if they build on our server, they have to worry about somebody coming along and destroying it. So we're planning on running this for a while. But yeah, that's how you get access to our server, and it's just on bhax.net. If you go over to the tip donate section. If you're watching on another service and maybe you want to get access to us on Discord, we actively monitor that even throughout the stream. And that's also how we communicate during the week. We do voice chats and all that good stuff. We've got a couple channels on there that are some nice curated memes and things that our regular Thomas will continue to be posting on. He's pretty awesome. He's kind of the king of memes, and so we've got stuff like that. It's just one example, but yeah, that's on our Discord, and you can chat with me live right now. I'm on the on-air stream chat inside our Discord as well. So yeah, just kind of getting that housekeeping stuff out of the way. So yeah, like I was saying, if you're watching this and you're like, well, how do I use inscribers? Don't worry. There's a video up on our various services from 2 days ago that will show you how to use the inscribers. But yeah, so we've added some new things here. The most important concept is these inscribers with the interface attached to them. I didn't change anything else. All I had to do was just slap an interface on top of it. And so the interface for these is nothing more than just something to push patterns in. And so the way this actually works is that you need to be able to have some kind of crafting CPU. So they're called crafting storage, but they're CPUs. They have to be in some kind of rectangular shape. You can't have them in an L shape or a circular shape or any other. It has to be either a square or a rectangle, whatever shape they end up touching. With the way that they're configured matters. And then once you've got that, then you're going to want to go over and create a pattern terminal. And this pattern terminal is basically just where you create the individual programming. This is actually how you program Applied Energistics. The ME system itself is by going in here, and you'll create a pattern, a blank pattern. And to do that, blank pattern. And it is nothing more than what you would do with any other pattern or any other recipe. So, you get the ingredients together, you make your pattern. Cool. What does that actually mean? I need, show me something I haven't seen before. Okay, fine. So once you've created that pattern, the first thing you'll probably want to do is make a pattern of the pattern. But what the hell does that even mean? Okay, so a pattern is your ability to store the recipe for how to make something. And you might ask, well, the recipes are right here in NEI. Why would I need to store them? Well, this is more powerful than that. This lets you say that in order to make something, you need to do the following tasks, which for something like making wood planks would be really easy, but for something like making lava could be very complicated. And to do that, you're going to be making these patterns, a lot of them. So initially when you make a pattern, you're going to, and just kind of ignore what I'm about to do right now because it might, for some of you that aren't familiar with how this stuff works, it might kind of freak you out. But this is auto crafting at its best. So I need a pattern. And this is what it'll end up looking like for you. You'll be able to just click an item. I need that thing. Craft it, please. And bam, now I have the item. I didn't have to do any of that. It did it for me. And so the way that you do that process is that you're going to make a pattern in the standard way you would with a crafting workbench. And then once you have your pattern terminal here, so this ME pattern terminal, you'll be able to then take those blank patterns and put them in here. Now, obviously, the first thing you probably want to create is I don't want to have to make these patterns again. If I'm going to be making a whole bunch of them, then I, of course, don't want to have to make that a regular thing. So you do what you would normally do. Oh, there is a creeper blowing up because of the turrets we have. But yeah, so you'll do the same thing you would normally do for any other recipe. But there's a twist here. So let's do glowstone. All right. Let's just grab a stack of 64. Okay, fine. Now, normally you would kind of like right click it in. But it's not taking it, but it is highlighting them. See, it's actually lighting them up. So what it's actually doing is I've got the NEI overlaying what the pattern should look like. And then when it's highlighted, that is actually what, the pattern that's being created looks like. So you saw, and I put these glowstone in. They're not actually in the pattern terminal. Only the information about them is in there. So it just knows that that's what I'm looking to make so far. And so it doesn't need those items if it's just looking for the information on how to make it. So again, I'm going to do my NEI just to have a template. And we're going to do quartz. All right, quartz glass. Again, I'm not actually putting these items in, but what I'm actually doing is programming this terminal. And I will show you this because what it's actually doing is it's just copying the name of it. No items are going in. So if I do this, I know that the iron was the last item at the bottom, of course. So if I just click that in, so now I have a pattern for a pattern. Well, what that actually means, once I hit encode here, is that now I've got a pattern to automatically craft additional patterns, which seems weird. Like, what does that do for me? So what you saw was, in order to make a blank pattern, I would have to go through the process of getting that quartz, the glowstone, putting it into the crafting terminal or your crafting workbench, and then putting all those materials together and crafting it by hand. Right. But when you're trying to teach a machine how to auto craft at high speed, you need more than that. And so this now, if I just ask for a new pattern or I ask for a new item, I can just click on that item and get it. So for instance, what if I need something like an ME interface? Maybe you don't know what that is yet. That's fine. But you know that it's an item and it's going to take a little bit of effort to make, like any other thing that we do here. Here's something that you're all definitely familiar with, pistons. So I want to make a piston. I don't have any pistons. You notice when I go through here and scroll down on this left here, I see craft. I don't see a number. Like for most of these, I'm going to see a number. But for this one, it says craft. This is because I don't have any of that item. If I click it, then I can actually specify how many of these I want to make, you know, plus or minus, whatever. And so if I just hit next on this, what it's going to do is it's going to figure out what it needs to do to make that piston. So it says, okay, you've got some iron ingots. We know you need that. Available to craft 4. Okay, so what it's saying is I don't have any wood planks, or I've got 2 wood planks, but I need to have 4 in total. Well, I do have this oak wood, so I have another recipe that says oak wood can convert into wood planks. And so it knows to chain those recipes together to get the needed components. And this is really where it starts to click that this is more powerful than just simply making the ingredients, making the item to make the, putting all the parts together in a specific way to make the thing that you're trying to make. This allows you to make every single subcomponent, if you've got the appropriate pattern, from start to finish. So I don't have oak wood planks, but I do have oak wood, so it's going to make the oak wood planks and then use those to make the piston. Cool. And if, for instance, I didn't have iron ingots, I could set it up to smelt iron ore or pulverized iron automatically and then pull that ingredient finished in and then use that on the next stage of the recipes. So that is just as simple as I can make it for now. That's what it looks like from a real high level perspective when we're just looking at like, what does it do for you? What does that actually look like? And you saw I could just click on an item and get it. So again, we're going to go piston. And yes, I can just do a quick search here at the top and get the item. Click on it, hit next, and start. Cool. So now it's crafted it basically instantaneously. If I had something where I needed to process a subcomponent, like say for instance I needed to smelt iron ore in order to make the iron ingot, then of course it would take longer and it would actually wait for that ingot to be crafted, and it would tell you right up here in this crafting status at the top right. You'll be able to click that and see if there's any crafting jobs active. If you've got something that's maybe hung up or is not set up quite right and it's hung, then all you gotta do is click on that item and hit cancel, and it'll stop it, because you can only have as many crafting recipes running as you've got processors. So those processors I showed you downstairs, I have one, so I can only do one recipe at a time. But that's fine for me at this stage of the game. So in order to get started with doing that, we had to make a pattern, and then you'll have to create what's called a molecular assembler. It's this cube thing, and whenever it's powered, it does glow kind of like a rainbow. And if we take a look at what it looks like in NEI, molecular assembler, it's just this guy right here. And it's not too terrible. It does require these specialized applied energistics to items called formation and annihilation cores. They do require a few subcomponents as well. Okay, fine. So we're going to assume that you went through and did all that and got a molecular assembler. So now you take the molecular assembler and you want to just make an ME interface and attach it to it by just shift right clicking it onto it. And it can go in any direction, any angle. I personally prefer to have a tessellating pattern here. So when I say tessellating pattern, what I'm really saying is, if we imagine briefly that the cobblestone is our ME interface and the dirt is the molecular assemblers, the way I have this set up right here is molecular assembler, interface, interface. So that's how I have it right now. But if I was to add another molecular assembler, or actually, you know what, I'm going to go grab some more cobble. I want to show you what this looks like when we start getting more of them. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that there's a lot of ways that you can structure molecular assemblers and interfaces to do auto crafting. But this is From what I can gather, it's probably one of the more efficient ways to use them. It's not going to always be the absolute fastest production speed, but there is some ways to, without having to restructure this, there's ways to make it go even faster. So the way I like to do it is just to have, you know, a nice pattern. So interface, assembler, assembler, interface. And the reason that this matters, and the reason why we have to have more than one interface attached to this assembler, is that this has a limited number of patterns. Like, these are actually patterns. You can see if we pull the patterns out, they are in fact the patterns. They just turn back into the icon of whatever it is they're designed to create when you put them into the interface. And yes, it only goes here. And so you only have this many slots available on every interface. So once you fill that up, the only way to keep adding more recipes is to add more interfaces. Well, okay, just add another interface. Well, eventually you're going to get to a point where you've added an interface on every side, maybe. Then what? Well, then you add more molecular assemblers. And so for me, what I like to do, just to have it look as clean as possible and give me the best ability to fix it should something really go bad, I like to keep it all on one level. So this setup will start off really humble. We're just going to have, wait, where are we at? It's this one. Okay, I broke every single one except the one I need. So initially, this is what we have here, right? But when I start having more, I'm going to keep expanding this out on the ceiling so that it's up out of the way, but yet I can still see it. And it's also just kind of a nice thing to look at. It's almost decoration in and of itself, how they glow. And I've also done this where I have my, I messed that up. What did I do? Oh, man, what am I doing? You think this would be really simple, but when you've been programming literally all day, the simple stuff does not always come easy. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so yeah, so we do that, and that, and that. You see, I'm just alternating. And the way that this would, why isn't it? Okay. The way that this would kind of grow over time is just sort of out in that direction along the ceiling for me. I've had these where they're in the floor, and my flooring is that. And it's pretty neat. It gives you this nice translucent look because you can see through the molecular assemblers. And even better, you can actually see when something is being crafted, it actually shows up inside the molecular assembler as a little icon. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, this is how I tend to grow out the molecular assembler auto crafting array. And I do it this way just because it's a little bit more efficient for my space. And there is times where I have the I have need of even higher density, and so then I'll just make it 3D. You know, instead now I'm building this multiple levels thick rather than just 2 layers or 1 layer, and that'll happen again organically as I need additional space. But the cool thing about this setup is that it gives me the ability to expand without having to worry about additional wiring. I don't have to worry about fighting with any sort of limitations for any of the assemblers, like running out of faces, because at all times I've got some sort of face visible for one of these assemblers, so that should I need additional capacity, all I have to do is just put it on the correct side, and it'll expand comfortably. And so that's how we do that piece of it. Now, once you have that, you're still not working yet. You've got to have the crafting CPUs. And so for these crafting CPUs, we discussed earlier that you need to have them in some sort of cuboid shape. So that means that it's either just a square, right? Or it has to be in something kind of like a rectangle, a cuboid, a cube. So we'll just imagine here briefly that the crafting storage is these cobblestone, right? So an acceptable shape is 1, 1, 2. All right. What about that? No, That is not an acceptable shape because it's not a rectangle or a square, a cuboid. But what you could do is just that, and now it is acceptable. So it will change what it looks like based on if it's correctly assembled or not. So you see how they look right now. When they're correctly connected, they'll have this darker appearance. So they'll go from this white color you see in my hand to the darker, fancier looking texture. So if I just put it there, you see it changed instantly, and that's because I had the correct setup for the crafting storage to work. And I personally haven't run into what the actual limits of being able to do this are, mostly because you don't want to have just one crafting CPU, or you don't want to have just one crafting processor set up like this. You're going to want to get multiples. And the reason for that is that you'll actually, if you need to run more than one recipe at a time, maybe...
Howdy, how are you?
Oh, hey. Hey, Zooberry. Great to have you. I'm doing pretty good. I mean, I've been programming for work all day, so my brain's a little bit microwaved. So I'm kind of half-assing it today for the stream, but I thought I'd at least update everybody on what all has happened and at least how to do some of the stuff that we've done since last time I was streaming on Tuesday. But yeah, I gotta wake up. So yeah, so this is, you'll want to have more than one crafting setup. So I could theoretically put another one here and another one, another one, another one. The more that you have, the more simultaneous recipes you can process at once. You'll be able to do things like, I'm out of iron.
LOL, no problem. Been working too.
Oh, hey, and thanks for the follow. Very nice, very nice. But yeah, so it's like, yeah, you'll want to be starting out with just one, but expand out. More is better, but then you'll eventually get to a place where some of your recipes are so complicated that you'll need to get bigger crafting storage units. So yeah, that's the process to make a 1K crafting storage is largely the same to make a 4K, 16K, whatever K storage. And the reason that matters is that if I do KME, and I'm just searching for the sizes here. So we start off at a 1K storage component, and then we go to 4, 16, all right, and then I think from 16 we go to 64, right? 16K, yeah, it jumps from 16K to 64K and 256K, and it just goes on, and each setup is made of components comprised of the previous tier. So this does get expensive if you continue to expand it. Hopefully you'll be in sort of a later game scenario and it won't be that big of a deal by the time you get to that 16K or 64K area. I've gone all the way up to the top, right? So that's a thing. You'll be using these in conjunction with the storage, the crafting. So if I go crafting, where it is, crafting unit, that's what we're looking for. So we've got the crafting unit, and you'll be making a crafting unit and then combining that on a workbench with whatever size storage component you get. And of course, it's made of all of the ingredients that we've been over in the previous episode. So that'll give you the different size. So I've got 4K, 16, 1K, whatever. But you notice I'm kind of not really talking about this co-processing unit. So the co-processing unit is an additional upgrade that you can attach to these processor towers. They still have to have the correct cuboid shape, right? So if I've got too high like this, and I've made myself a nice co-processing unit, I want to attach it. Well, nope, that won't work. All right. So I can either attach it to the top, or I can build an additional, maybe another crafting storage piece and just slap it on there and then put the co-processing unit up there to make it, again, a rectangle or a square. And the reasoning behind all of that is that it still counts. It counts as a single multi-block shape. So you've got to follow the rules when it comes to making those. And you can combine differing crafting storage sizes. So that does definitely give you the option to expand as needed with whatever resources you happen to have, instead of worrying about whether or not you can afford the next highest tier for storage. So that gets us to some of the basics knocked out of, how we actually accomplished a lot of that stuff. We made the pattern, we made the crafting unit, we made the molecular assembler arrays. I showed you how to tessellate the arrays so that you're able to expand comfortably without having to worry about space as much. And then there's also this other idea of production recipes. So when we look at how to make something like iron, okay, so one of the most basic items in the game to make for most people, making an iron ingot, you're either finding something that happens to combine into, but no, that's not actually how we make most of the ingots we use. We combine by smelting some sort of either pulverized powder of iron or the ore itself in some kind of smelter. So that's not a recipe that you can really put on a pattern, right? Well, all right. So let me update the. Let me do the production. I'm updating the infographic at the bottom here. AE production patterns. All right, AE production patterns. So the way that this is going to work is that for most recipes, you're going to use what is effectively like your really fancy version of your crafting workbench, like you're used to. But when you're doing production recipes, you have to do a little bit different. Many people kind of ignore this part and don't realize that that's a button you can click, because it's kind of visually, you just kind of get focused in on the center of your screen or doing whatever, and you don't think about where that is. But that's a button. What does that do? Processing pattern. So for these things that require some machine or thing to interact with your ingredients in order to produce a desired outcome, like turning iron ore into iron ingots in a smelter, you have to make a processing pattern. And that's, you notice it's different because we do have multiple outputs here, because for some things you can have multiple ins and multiple outs. So for that, and quick little aside here, you can reuse old patterns if you don't need them anymore. You just take them, put them in here, and hit clear. So there you go. Now it's a blank pattern. I can reuse it. Well, it's blank for our purposes now. So how do we make iron? Well, since I use the Mine Factory Reloaded pulverizer on my iron, I'm going to have pulverized iron. So pulverized iron, one pulverized iron is going to equal one iron. And you notice I'm just getting 1 and 1. I cannot, it does matter. The quantity does matter at this stage, because if I put this in and this, what your system is going to think is that it can just put one pulverized iron into a smelter and get 64 iron ingots out. And obviously that's not going to work. So you can just click on it to get rid of it, and I'm right clicking a single ingot into that. All right, so now I have made this pattern. I'm going to encode it. Now it says creates one iron ingot with pulverized iron using substitutions, yes. So if you click this or dict substitutions here, I like to leave that checked for most, if not all of my recipes. It's not enabled by default, but if you check that whenever you're first setting up your pattern terminal, it'll just stay on unless you specifically turn it off. So the whole idea behind that is that if there's ability for a substitution of an item that is similar, for instance, like, again, with our iron, we have the ability to use all these different types of iron dust. So, all right, all of these, depending on how they are configured in your setup, they can effectively operate as the same item. Like, we don't care if it's iron powder, iron grit, crushed iron ore, or pulverized iron. That's all effectively the same thing when it comes to what the output is. So, and this goes back to how your mod pack is individually configured, and because we're using Feed the Beast Infinity Evolved, we know that those are pre-configured in the OR dictionary, OR dict. So that's just kind of a little bit under the hood how that works. So if you notice that it happens to be using maybe macerated iron pieces instead of pulverized, they're basically the same thing, right? So there you go. And if you are really not wanting it to do that, you just uncheck OR dict substitutions and it won't use substituted recipe items. So now that we've got our encoded pattern for how to make an iron ingot, what do we do with it? Well, I've got my furnace over here. And so the way I have mine set up is I have a chest up here, which just goes in the back where I've configured that to be the input, and then it'll output to the chest to the right. Simple as that. Now, the next thing is, right, well, what do I do with that? You need to have an interface. So most of these recipes, especially as they relate to machines that interact with your ingredients to make processing recipes, you're going to need an actual interface, an ME interface. So again, I've made a recipe already and it just quickly jumped through that. The thing about these interfaces is that they start off square, but that's not always the approach you want to take, because the square interface is useful if you need to interact with more than one side of this interface. One could say, maybe I have an extra furnace on every side of this interface. Maybe I don't, and I don't need more than one face. Well, to do that, you're just going to take your interface and put it in any crafting, and it'll switch to a flat version of itself. And the reason that that is a good idea is that if you happen to have another machine right next to your interface isn't going to care that one of them is the pulverizer and one of them is your trash can. It's not going to care that one of them is a chest and maybe one of them is a DSU, or it doesn't care. What matters is what is it connected to. And so in order to specify what you're connecting to, if you don't need the multi-sided version, and again, you can switch back if you need to. If you don't need this multi-sided version that it comes configured with, you'll definitely want to switch it to the flat version, just because it keeps you from accidentally attaching the interface to things that happen to be placed near it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, why don't I go ahead and attach this interface up here, and I just held down Shift to keep from interacting with, like, opening the chest, and then I just right-clicked that interface up there. So now that that's attached, that's our input side, and that's where what I'm doing with that interface. I'm actually plugging it into the input side of that machine, and then from there, I'm going to do this really ugly and fast so that I can at least just describe this process to you guys. I know I have the rest of my ME network down here, so I'm just going to break this and attach it to the rest of my system real quick, like that. Okay, so now this interface is connected, but it doesn't yet know how to use iron. So to do that, you've got to have the next phase. You've got to actually have that pattern placed into the pattern slots on the appropriate interface. But here's the important part that I need everybody to pay really close attention to. By doing it this way, what's going to happen is it's going to know how to process iron, but the thing is, it'll keep putting iron into it'll put iron into the system, but it won't know where to get that iron back out. So the other thing that you can do, and I'm going to show you two different ways you can do this. There is there's an import bus here. So the import bus it's not too bad to make, but that is an acceptable way to get the items from a crafting recipe into your system consistently. So again, we're going to attach this import bus. Again, it needs to go on the output side of that machine. So my machine outputs to this chest on the right. I'm going to attach it right here. Okay, so now that import bus is active. And what we're going to see is that all the items in this chest are going to slowly drain out if I had acceleration upgrades, which can be used, they're just placed right here. If I had acceleration upgrades right here, I could put them in this to make it go much faster. I'm going to do that later just to save you guys some time. I'm not going to go through that process. But what you can do then is just wait for your chest to fill up. I don't want to sit here and wait for that, so I'm going to quickly just empty out this chest. Okay, so, and the other interesting thing is that your applied energistics network doesn't really care where the items get put into your network. They just know that the quantity changed somewhere, and it doesn't really care how. So if you import it through an import bus, that's fine. In this case, I'm really doing it the way it's not really efficient, but for purposes of saving us time right now, I'm just putting them all in there. So the way that this is going to work is, and I'll show you guys what happens if you do this wrong. So I've got, this is the input side of my machine. I've got my pattern to create 1 iron ingot from pulverized iron. And so what this interface will do is it will act as if a person just placed that item into that chest. So now if I go into my terminal here, iron ingot. All right, so I've got 214 right now. All right, maybe I'll use all of those up. Aha, so I've used them all up. Now there's craft option. So I'm going to hit craft, and I craft this item. Great. It knows that it needs to use that, and it will. So now we're crafting. All right. Hey, we see it is, well, it crafted it. All right. So it put the iron ingot. Aha. Okay, so good. It put it there. But if you look, you're going to see that it's still crafting it. Why is that? Well, it's because it has to end up in your system somehow. So there's 2 ways you can accomplish this. The first, and probably the more simple way, depending on how you look at it, is to just put an import bus on the thing that is the output side, whatever that looks like on whatever machine or contraption you've built. So in this case, I'll just attach this to that import bus. And this is really rainy, so I want to get rid of the rain real quick for purposes of making it so you guys can see. Let's do toggle downfall. All right, so now we've got sunshine. Okay, so so now the item is imported, and as a result, if we go up to our crafting status, nothing's been crafted. That's because, guess what? The item is now in our inventory. So to recap that real quick, make sure that you've got an import bus or some way of getting that item back into your system after it's been crafted, because your interface is going to act a lot like someone placing that item into the input side of your machine. So I mentioned that there's 2 ways to do this. Yep, there is. The other way is to use the interface as both an input and an output. And how do we do that? Well, the thing is, when it's flat like this, there's no way to attach anything to it other than the side that it's connected to. And of course the Fluix cable on the other side. But if it's a square, then what you can do, and this is an option which can be a little bit, depending on your comfort level, it can be more easy or it can actually be even more complicated. And so part of this is that I can't put this here, because then the interface is going to say, well, I've got 2 things attached to me. I'm going to push items into either one. Well, no, because that one that's the output side, right? We don't want it to go there. What you actually need to do is, and you might say, well, why don't you just put it where it was? Well, that's the problem, is if I put it there, I need to actually pipe items into the interface. So to do that, in this instance, I'm going to connect it here. I don't need that up there. And I know this is very ugly, very whatever. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, just to give you guys an idea what it looks like. But now I've got that attached to a single inventory, the input. So again, the interface is going to act as if somebody's placing the item in. And then I need to place something. In this case, I'm going to use a transfer node from extra utilities. And I need an extra pipe from extra utilities to reach the side of this interface. All right, and so now items that are placed into this chest will be pushed into the interface. So that will also produce the same outcome. If I ask for an iron ingot and I don't have any, I hit next. All right, what it's going to do, it's going to place the iron in there. It's going to show up in here, and I think it already actually showed up, and it pushed it into the interface. So the interface accepts items that it has requested. The really important thing that people tend to forget is if you get into the habit of making a system like this where you're pushing items in, what happens if I need to use this furnace for something that I didn't auto-craft? Maybe I need to do something by hand. Well, the problem is the interface doesn't always accept items if it didn't request them. So you can cause your ME system to jam up because maybe this transfer pipe or this transfer node is going to be trying to push items into the interface. The interface isn't going to take it. It doesn't happen all the time. I'll be honest and say I don't know exactly all of the conditions in which an interface will accept items. I just know that for sure, if it was requested through auto crafting, it will absolutely accept that item back into it. But for purposes of being a little bit, I would say more reliable at times and simple in other ways, if you just simply drop your interface on, wire it up with Fluix cable, and then attach an import bus to the output of the machine. It'll import everything from that chest into your ME system, which will satisfy the interface and give it the ability to finish the recipe off. So that's how you do that. And once you've got that process down, it's really just a matter of applying that to anything and everything that you make in your base. So if we go over to something like my auto farm, I hinted at this last stream, and we'll see how many people catch on. But what I've got, you probably see what kind of looks like flooring here, but what you're actually seeing is cable facades. They're hiding the guts of this machine that I've got set up here. And so what we're doing is, if I get the network tool and put it in my inventory, you can see through all of the cables that I have set up here. And the interesting thing here is that I've got an interface attached to this chest. Well, this chest, as we talked about in the previous stream, this chest is the input side to automatically grow whatever is placed into that chest on the auto farm, and then automatically harvested and brought back in. So, well, what do I put in there? Wood. So if I take, in this case, I like to use 3 wood to 1 sapling, unless you've got a particular item from whatever a mod that tends to grow much larger than that, like the redwoods. Those can be dramatically larger, obviously. And be careful growing some of those really huge trees in something like this, because it will cause a lot of damage a lot of times, because it'll try to grow its fancy root system out and it'll damage the auto farm. But if you're just growing regular trees, for the most part, I find that 3 to 1 works great. So 3 oak wood produced from 1 oak sapling. And that is really no different than our iron recipe. So what that ends up meaning for everybody is that we're used to doing things maybe with iron, but what about producing food and things that grow? Well, you do that the same way with an auto farm. You're able to put 1 oak sapling equals 1 oak wood. And I have a similar recipe for the rubber tree. I do 3 rubber wood and 3 rubber, raw rubber. And that would equal from 1 rubber sapling. So that does work here, and that does reliably function. Now you're going to say to yourself, well, it doesn't always grow the same size. The point is not to make it always equal the exact same thing, because it's okay if it has more output than it was expecting, but it's not okay if it has less output than it was expecting. Because if it has less, then the recipe will stall waiting for that ingredient to come back into the system like we saw. Oh, I need to turn off that weather. I don't know why the weather likes to show up every single time we do a stream. There we go. So pretty. But yes, so that process works the same on a redstone furnace as it does in this auto farm setup that we talked about. And of course, you can do the same thing with wheat. Just make sure that you're underestimating and not overestimating the ingredients, because that does really create problems if it happens to be under or overestimating what you think you're going to get out of it. And I did notice one thing that does matter, and that is or-dict substitutions, or dictionary substitutions. So those matter in this case because not every type of oak sapling will not every type of sapling will produce oak wood. So in this case, I do actually need to have or-dict substitutions turned off. All right. So now it says using substitutions, no. All right. So now I'll go back here and place that in here. And I also need to make sure that I've done that on these two as well. You can reconfigure. Ah, it's so pretty. So very pretty. You can reconfigure them the same exact way. Where am I at? Okay, so you notice I'm tapping my shift bar right now, and that'll show you what's inside. And I use it just as a quick visual for finding patterns in my inventory. So in this case, we're going to turn off or-dict. So you can see it says raw rubber, and rubber wood is from one rubber sapling. Same. Just make sure using substitutions off. Okay, so there's our wheat. Do the same thing, and you see it kind of copied over the previous one. We don't actually derive rubber wood from wheat, so just get rid of that. All right, and we want to turn off substitutions and encode it. Done. Okay. So now we've got that. Quickly that. So now I'll put these back in here. And the other ingredient that's kind of important in this, because I've seen people do different pieces of this setup, but not the whole thing. I have a method for automating the fertilization. I haven't put it in just yet because it's not totally required yet. When we start doing really heavy automation, it starts to become a bigger issue. But for now, I can just move fertilizer into the fertilizer system here. And the act of doing that, I'm going to do this real quick. Let's see, I need to turn this guy off. All right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to let those finish out. Oh, what you're also seeing right now is overnight I had my auto farm set up to just perpetually farm wheat and continually refeed the seeds back into the system to re-farm them again and again and again. And so it's been going for hours and hours and hours. And this is probably filled up with seeds. Yeah, I started with 5 seeds, by the way. So it's already to that point. All right, so I've got plenty of seeds now. Not even an issue at all. And I usually close this back up just because if you're growing some of the trees, they will rapidly expand without warning, and sometimes you can actually suffocate inside there if a tree grows up around you. All right, so I'm going to turn off that so it's nice and clean. Almost done. You can see it's fertilizing these pieces of wheat, and as soon as they are mature, it instantly harvests them and stores them in the ME system because, you guessed it, these have import buses as well. So if we go off to the side here, all right, you can see I've got an import bus attached to the bottom of this chest so that it will quietly take any items that are generated from the harvesting activities and immediately import those into the system, because if you have a recipe that's been standing open for a while, it will just hang up your ME system. You got to make sure that those recipes are cleared out and finished. Otherwise, you know, you eventually run out of crafting spaces, and you've got to fix that before you move forward. So in the case of, let's say, rubber, so let's see. Man, that's a lot of rubber. Man, I got a lot of rubber here. So if I need, let's say for a recipe calls for a rubber bar, and that rubber bar is then converted into plastic to make plastic sheets. Okay, but you got to start with raw rubber. So this is something that I haven't seen a lot of people do, is kind of close that loop and not have to farm at all. So if I just ask for one piece of raw rubber, the system says, so I'm going to need a sapling to do that, and it's going to create rubber wood and rubber. I don't need the rubber wood, but it's a byproduct. Okay, cool. So now what it's going to do is it's going to place a sapling in that chest, which is automatically planted. And then because of the fertilizer, it will be continually fertilized until it is able to grow up. And I do find that if I'm growing a lot of trees, for some reason it's easier to grow a lot of trees than it is one or two. So there it goes. But you can see it grows instantly once it does, and pretty much instantly it's harvested up. And you see I've got 2 harvesters, and that's just because I find that 2 happens to be the sweet spot where it can keep up with my usage of this system. Because sometimes if you just have one harvester, that doesn't actually harvest very quickly. So all of those parts from that tree ended up in the chest, which was then import bust. Same concept as right here. And then I've got rubber. Now, of course, like I mentioned, we want to underestimate the ingredients when we don't have a definite amount. So I know that the smallest rubber tree that I have personally seen, maybe I've seen 2 high trees, but for the most part, it's going to be 3 high rubber trees. And they can be larger, and it's not that big of a deal, but they can't be smaller. So 3 and 3. And so we got more than we bargained for. Cool. That's not a problem. But yeah, so that gives you the ability to do pretty ridiculous things like I was doing earlier. Say, for instance, I want, let's say I've got so many oak saplings, gosh. If I want a ton of oak wood here, maybe, let's say, how about 200 oak wood? Normally, you'd have to go out and go chop down a bunch of trees and all that. Nope. No need. And all I got to do is watch the show. And you can see, look, no hands. And what it's going to do is occasionally some of those trees are going to grow together and make an extra giant tree. And so you'll get even more bang for your buck. You'll actually get so much more out of this than you planned for when you plant a bunch of trees at once, or a bunch of a particular crop that happens to grow together. Some of these will take a little bit to pop, but all in all, they go pretty instantly. And even the huge trees, because some of these are absolutely gargantuan, it's able, with 2 harvesters, to very quickly chew through that tree. And you can see all of the ingredients will be, well, pretty much as fast as they come in, they're being vacuumed up by the applied energistics system. And yeah, so you can use this with pretty much any crop you want. There's a few things that you want to be careful about, like for instance, mandrakes. So if you've got the witchery mod installed, mandrakes will work in this. They'll work. The problem is that with the mandrakes, whenever they are harvested, just like whenever a human harvests them, you got this little mandrake running around screaming at you and all this stuff. And that's kind of reason why I have this fence here, this glass barrier, is for kind of like weird stuff like that. I want to contain it inside here. And then if I know I'm going to be harvesting things like mandrakes, I would set up some of these portal gun turrets to aim down in, and yep, they will mow through those mandrakes. And then you put a vacuum tube up somewhere in your area, and it'll just vacuum the mandrake pieces back up. So yeah, you can automate mandrakes too. So yeah, it'll keep going, and I don't have to do a single thing to make this work. So that is do production patterns, and as a bonus, how you also automate things that weren't meant to be automated. Because it's like, it feels a little bit like voodoo when people talk about, well, you can't automate trees, right? Well, you can automate them a little bit. Like you can make a tree farm, and then you got to plant the trees, and then you got to have something that chops the trees down, right? But you got to wait, right? No. And in fact, you don't even need to have a tree farm at all. You notice this is all the farm I need. 9 blocks. I am not setting up groves and groves of trees. I'm not setting up specialized crops for wheat. I'm not setting up specialized crops for anything. I have one 9x9 plot of land that does literally everything I need. If I have a really highly specific thing that absolutely will not work, then okay, fine. And in the case of ender lilies, yes, they are in that category. And cotton is kind of like that. It works just fine. The problem is that it continues to work even if you harvest it. Like the harvester will harvest the cotton off of the plants, but then the plant stays there and it continues to remature and remature. And that's not really a problem unless you've got fertilizer going into it and then it eats through all your fertilizer in one night without realizing. I had that happen to me. So you can see this has just been running without fertilizer, and so I've got the cotton and the ender pearls showing up. Same system. Just continually harvests them and plants them as needed. But yeah, so that's how you automate growing things. The next stage here is going to be AE. What is this? Oh, what do I call this? This is going to be applied energistics, fluix production, fluix and pure Certus automation. All right, fluix. This is fluix and pure Certus automation. So for most people, the way that you're going to make pure Certus, let me get rid of all this. I don't need any of this. Let's get all that out of there. Get all that out of there. All right. Close all that out. Good. So the way that most people make pure Certus, and I'm talking about pure Certus crystals, is you follow the directions on the side of the box. You're clicking up here, drop a Certus quartz seed made from Certus dust and sand into a puddle of water to make the process faster, add growth accelerators. Okay, fine. That sounds pretty manual to me, so I don't like how that sounds already, but all right, so Certus quartz dust, and I've done that by running it through a pulverizer or a macerator. And all right, sand. So now then I take the sand. Okay, do that and that. Okay, that makes a Certus quartz seed. Fine. Okay, so what? This isn't bad, but so far it's not horrible. Well, so I'm going over there. I'm kind of getting myself ahead here. So for most people, what you're going to do initially is you're going to toss that Certus seed in there, and you're going to stare at it. And you're like, what is it? Oh, growth accelerators. Okay, so you get your growth accelerators. Great. But then you realize that those growth accelerators eat a ton of power compared to what they do. And actually how often they're used, you don't want to have them turned on all the time because it's going to burn through a ton of power. So you got this problem where you have to make these seeds and then throw them in this pond and then turn on this accelerator system. And okay, fine. That's a lot of steps. And that's a lot of manual steps I don't like. So how do you do that? This way. So what you're seeing here, and I'm going to set this to daytime because this is a little bit dark. Time set day. All right, there we go. It should be, ooh, so pretty. So now you can see the X-ray view of all this. What I've got is the crystal growth accelerators. I've got a chest down here that presumably has something to do with this, right? But all right, then I got this. So the problem that you're going to run into with trying to automate this system is how how do you pick up an item from the physical world with a machine? There's a couple different machines that will do that, but the one that I found uses the least amount of lag and potentially is also by far the fastest, at least in my experience, has been the transfer node. So if you take a transfer node and you put the world interaction upgrade, yep, that's what it is, and you put filters in for the finished products, not for the items that you put in, but no, the finished products that you want to take out, what'll happen is those items, as they land on this, either because they've been generated or somebody tossed the finished item on there, they'll get vacuumed up by this transfer node and they will go into this chest. So once they go into that chest, then we just import it like any other item from any other recipe. But then the problem is, okay, how do I put them in their first place? So there's a number of ways you can do this. One way that I've shown Thomas and Joseph and a number of people how to do this is with the open blocks dropper. So look for the item dropper. So the item dropper here, this will, when you give it a pulsed redstone signal, it will drop whatever happens to be in its inventory down below it. Okay, fine. But you got to give it a redstone pulse, not a consistent signal, but a pulse. So how do you do that? Well, all right, so clock. So you get this redstone clock and you just smack it right up on the side of the dropper, and it'll just apply a pulse every whatever seconds, and that will do what you want it to do for the most part, except it kind of makes this annoying ticking sound, and it's also really slow. What if you're crafting, I don't know, 1,000 Certus crystals, or you need a ton of fluix? What do? Here's where it gets a little bit trickier. So put on your propeller hat for this one. So what we have to do, and I hesitate to show you guys this because I don't want to, I know that a lot of people are going to kind of get overwhelmed with what we're about to see here, but the idea is, I can kind of clean this up by just getting closer to it. You can barely see it. Of course we've got more rain. Of course we do. Of course we got more rain. All right, so you'll want to have the interface like you normally would for every other contraption that you make, with, of course, the patterns like you would create for any other production recipe. No difference there, but you connect it to another interface. Now, the important thing here is that this interface is in a separate ME network, which is why I've taken the time to actually get the system color-coded. Oh, come on. So the system is color-coded with colored ME glass cables, depending on what network it's a part of. So for this, I used yellow to signify the item dropper system, and I use red to signify the power system because they are different and they do need to be separate. And if they are connected, it will not work right. Because you have to turn on and off the power to the growth accelerators, but you need to keep power to the item dropping system because it won't work if it doesn't have power. And these need to not work and not get power when they're not in use. Complicated, right? So the way that you're going to do this is you'll have your primary network interface somewhere on the side, doesn't matter where it is, right? And then attach another interface that goes to a completely separate network that only has one thing in it, formation plane. So the way that this has to work is that you have a formation plane. It has no, I mean, I could configure it, but we're not really interested. It's not placing blocks. We just want it to drop the items down. So there's nothing to this. This is as dumb as it gets system with two items in it. It only has the interface down there. You can see it kind of just faintly colored in yellow, and then it goes up to the formation plane. So what happens is anytime an item is pushed into the system, the formation plane immediately sees it and just pushes it back out as an item. That's all it does. That's literally all it does. And in the process of doing that, you need to make sure that that system has power because it's not going to get power through the interface. So interfaces they transfer items, but they don't transfer power or data per se. They can kind of, some people are like, oh, it does other things. Yes, I know, but for our purposes here, it only transfers items, all right? So then how do you get power to the system? Well, I just connect it to another Fluix cable, right? Wrong, because if you connect this interface, if you connect this system here, this yellow system, to your ME system, anything that shows up in your network will just be pushed out of this formation plane. Yes, it will just eject all of your stuff out into the world. That is not a good time for anyone. So you have to keep them separated. Well, to do that, we use something that for some reason a lot of people don't know about, which is called the quartz fiber cable. The quartz fiber cable will transfer power and power alone and nothing else. It does not transfer data, it does not transfer items, it only transfers power. And so what we're doing is we're powering this system without actually connecting it to the rest of the ME network in terms of like data or items. So I just daisy chained it off. You can see the horseshoe right here, quartz fiber, and then we're inside that network. So now it's getting power. All right, so that takes care of that. Now, how do we deal with the growth accelerators? Well, there's also another thing that for some reason a lot of people aren't aware of, and that is the level emitter. So a level emitter gives you the ability to send a signal. You can just barely see it right there. It's that red and white mechanism right there in the middle. So this level emitter, people are accustomed to using for if I have X number of an item or I don't have X number of an item, then either turn on or off the redstone signal. And that kind of gives you the ability to turn on lights or turn on machines or whatever automatically based on the inventory inside of your ME network. Okay, that's pretty straightforward, but that's not what we're using this for. If you put the crafting card upgrade in it, what it will do is it will automatically emit a signal when an item is crafting. So now, if you're following along, you'll see we've got a pure Certus quartz here. So what that means is anytime a pure Certus quartz crystal recipe is being crafted inside of your network, it's going to emit a redstone signal out the front of it. And then you could just barely see it. I'm gonna have to, I don't know if I can get an angle on this, but there is a ME toggle bus that is in there. So toggle bus. The toggle bus is really pretty simple to make, but what it does for you is it gives you the ability to switch a ME cable on or off if it has redstone signal. Not to be confused with the inverted toggle bus, because that inverted toggle bus will stay on all the time unless it gets a signal. So make sure for this particular setup, we want to just use the regular ME toggle bus. So it'll switch off if it doesn't get a redstone signal. So what that does is now we have connected that toggle bus. You can hardly see it. I made this really dense. The toggle bus is hiding right inside there. Yeah, there it is. So the toggle bus is connected, and then of course to quartz fiber, because we don't want anything but power going into the system. And then we've got these red cables. So these red cables signify the power for my growth accelerators. You can use any color you want. I just happen to use these for this project. Yeah, but that's what happens there. And as soon as this system starts crafting pure Certus, a redstone signal is applied out to the toggle bus. The toggle bus then gives power to the growth accelerator systems. The growth accelerators are connected together, all four sides, and they are not connected to anything else at all. And for anyone that was watching last episode, you'll probably be familiar with this, but for those that weren't, you're probably wondering how I get all this so densely packed. Well, we've got these cable anchors we can use, and you can see these black things connected on all sides, and what those are is actually cable anchors. What they allow you to do, see I've got one highlighted right here, what they allow you to do is have cables that are running right next to each other that would normally attach because they're so close, and you can keep them separated. So for the red cable here, I've got the cable anchors on all sides. So it's not going to connect on any side. It's basically isolated, except the one side that actually gets power. There you go. So yeah, that is how you would connect a system up like this. And Of course, we're also using cable facades just to give it a nice look, but we don't actually need that in order to make this work the way I've got it. That's just for icing on the cake. So, of course, what does this look like in action? So let's see here. Make sure, yeah. And the nice thing here is that you notice I wall this off. You don't have to make this as tall as I have. You could actually put the formation plane right above the water if you wanted, but I like the added fun of the items physically falling in from a height. Doesn't slow it down really any. So Fluix. Well, let's make something let's do pure Certus. All right, so I'm going to use up the pure Certus, toss that in there. And let's make pure Certus. So I'll just do 2, and we'll do 4. Okay. So it says I need sand, Certus coarse dust to make a sand, and then drop it in. All right, cool. So you can see, there it goes. It's just ejected those seeds into the vat. And what you may or may not immediately notice, if I get right on it, you can just barely tell. These are active. See device online. It's very subtle because they're covered on all sides with thickened glass and everything, but this is active. And if we open up here, you can see, well, maybe you can't. There it is. There's the level emitter, and it is actively applying a signal to the toggle bus, which is powering the growth accelerators. Growth accelerators turn on until the crafting is complete. As soon as the crafting is complete, they immediately switch off automatically. That's it. That is it. Done. If I need Fluix cables, or I need Fluix crystals, the process is exactly the same, except it doesn't need to turn on the growth accelerators, and you notice those aren't in that level emitter, so the growth accelerators stay off. It's fine. It works. And you see I can only craft one at a time because it's still working on the other one. So if I wanted to do multiples of these things at once, of course I can craft like 100 pure Certus if I wanted to, but then if I wanted to do that and make Fluix and make use of our farm here, then I would need another crafting processor for that. So yeah, you're gonna see this grow up. We're just gonna kind of watch this for a second here. Grab a drink. So just watch this grow up, and then pay close attention right here to that level emitter. All right, we got four growth accelerators, so it's relatively fast, but just give me a second here. Oh, there it goes. It just sucked them in, and now it'll be importing it.
Bye, have a great time.
Done. That's it. That's it. So now the growth accelerators have automatically switched off. See device offline, and all set, right? I mean, this rain is just really annoying. All right, so that whole system fully automated, and maybe you want to see what Fluix crystals look like. All right, so let's make like 3 of these. You notice I don't have to make very many of them because this is able to make it in real time, so I don't have to have the recipes. I don't have to have the materials standing by. So they can stay in as whatever state that they came in, and then you process them automatically when you need to, so that you're not using any more materials or space than you have to. So let's start. And actually, it happened so quickly we didn't even see. But yeah, you see it. They dropped out, they fell in, they got picked up, and now Fluix. Done. Just like that. So yeah, that is how you automate stuff that shouldn't be automated. There's a number of other things that we can automate, like for instance, even taking berries off of a bush. We can do that. Yep. We can automate the building of entire buildings. That's the thing you can do. Yes. With ME, yes. You can actually copy entire houses and put them into an alternate dimension using spatial storage systems through ME. I've actually used an ME system as a kind of interdimensional transport system. So you can put your body into your own ME system and transfer yourself through your ME system. That's a thing you can do. And of course, some simpler things, like for instance, the charger here. Like we were showing earlier, the interface, when it requests an item, it can accept the item that it was requesting through itself. So for things like charging your crystals, your Certus quartz, you just put the charged Certus quartz filter on there, and if I do charged, all right, let's do like 4 of these. So it does that. You can see each of those Certus quartz, it only vacuums it up whenever it's fully charged and leaves it in until it isn't. And if you were to use this to charge something else besides Certus quartz, it would not take it away. It'll actually stay in there because it's only interested in charged Certus quartz. So there you go. I think that's about it. Like I said, I was going to do definitely a shorter stream than I normally do today, because today's normally my Overwatch day, but I'm absolutely not mentally ready for that right now. So that I think we're gonna conclude for today. And just to remind everybody, as you know, as we're kind of signing off here, the website for the stream is located at bhax.net. That's bhax.net. If you're interested in getting started on our server, we do ask that everybody that wants to take part in the server subscribe. And you're saying, well, how much? It's only $1. All right, I'm not. That's all it's about. It's just something to say you've contributed to the server in some way, and that's how you get access to the server. Details to follow if you were to take advantage of that. We've got our Discord server, and you can join us there. And we've also got all the different locations that we're streaming to. A number of these locations actually will save our streams, so if you can't find me on one because it doesn't save old streams, then check on the other. It's probably there too. I've got my information on my build, this system that is running the stream right now, and Minecraft, and the Minecraft server is all running on this. You can see that under builds.gg/BlackburnHax. As always, if you've got the questions, I've got the answers. You probably don't have access to a hacker on a daily basis, so ask away. If it's game related, cool. If it's hacking related, cool, extra cool. Information security, IT related, all good. Ask me anything. We'll either answer it on the appropriate stream, like if it's a Minecraft question, we'll answer it on our Minecraft stream. But if it's like an IT kind of hacking question, we'll answer that on our monthly roundup, our mailbag episode we do once a month. We've actually got the next one coming up on April 1st, so that didn't plan that, but it's just the way it came out. First Monday of every month. We've got our stream schedule here. I do stick to it. I do. Yeah, I think that's it, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, well, just thank everybody for stopping by. We do these streams twice a week. The first of the week is Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central Time. And you can get the time in your time zone just by going to our events page, or I'll post the event typically on whatever service. If I have the option, I'll post it there. And we do our Overwatch stream, at least provided, barring any issues, we'll do it on Thursdays around this time. This was kind of a informal, just a quick catch up. But yeah, go through our episodes. I do make a point to try and put the information about what I'm discussing on screen so that you can kind of just scrub through the video and find the spot that you wanted that guide or piece of information from. And that gives you a nice little repository of information to be able to reference later, because I know a lot of this stuff is over the span of hours, and you don't want the hours, you want the 2 minutes that I was talking about this particular item. So if you can scrub through and find the exact spot that I was talking about an item, that's always available. And yeah, thank you very much for stopping by. Hope to see you soon.